Um, yeah, thanks, Corinda. So, yeah, obviously what we're doing today is we're going to hear from someone outside the company, and hopefully I'll take the opportunity to learn something from his experience and lessons. But before we get into introducing our guests, I just want to talk very quickly about why we do this. So, um, we started this a couple years ago, and it began as an opportunity to learn from our providers in the field about what they were experiencing. And I think over the past few years has brought a lot of value in respect to that. But in talking with Noah over the last few months, we've also thought that it would be great to hear other perspectives or insights from people in different industries. So it's my great pleasure to introduce my friend Josh. Josh and I served together in the military. Josh was a Green Beret, Special Forces soldier. He served for 30 years in the military, um, beginning in 1989, retiring in 2020. Um, he basically held every leadership position that a Special Forces NCO could hold, and he did so over a long and illustrious career. He was selected for many nominative or selected positions. So he actually had this really cool opportunity. He was selected to go work and train with the Special Air Service in Australia, a very elite military unit there. He deployed several times. I actually don't know how many times or to where, but has served in combat overseas, and is just an all-around outstanding stand-up guy. I learned a lot from him. I just a quick bit of history on us. So I had a few different jobs in the military, and the final job for me was to be the legal advisor for a command of Green Berets. And as part of that job, I came in cold with no experience, never having worked with those guys before. And so one of the things that I did was try to find people who were experienced and knew the ropes and have them teach me as much as I could convince them to do so. And Josh was one of those people that was very gracious with his time, had a ton of experience in forming teams, in leading groups, in working through difficult problems, developing a culture. So just an all-around leadership practitioner. And so we're lucky to have Josh. He now works in the private sector. He works for a company called West Shore Home, which has nearly 2,000 employees, excuse me, and works across 13 different states on the East Coast. And his job there is to do just what we're doing today, which is to talk about training and development and focus on how teams get better and how they learn from things that come up and develop and all that. So we're very lucky to have him. I hope that you'll all give him attention. But at the very end, we're going to say thank you to Josh. We're going to let him go. And then we're going to hang on for just a couple minutes as a team and reflect on takeaways, lessons learned, that sort of thing. So with that, Josh, before I hand it over to you, I think it'd be great if everyone here on the call could just quickly introduce themselves, say what they do, and where they are working from.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Thanks.
I can go. We can start with recruitment. My name is Vanessa, and I'm one of the recruiters here, and I've been with Wilderness now for just over 2 years, and I am based out of Boise, Idaho.
Nice. Boise is beautiful.
It is gorgeous. Yes. I don't plan on ever leaving.
Yeah, I'm Tanner. I'm Vanessa's other half in recruiting, and I'm based out of Spokane. Maybe less beautiful, maybe not.
Little less beautiful, but I bought a dog there once, so.
Okay, nice.
Hi, Josh. I'm Diane, and I'm one of the account executives. I have Greater Alaska as my territory, and I'm located in the Bitterroot Valley of Montana.
Oh, super nice.
Hi, Josh. My name's Susan. I am one of the other AEs. I staff the Northwest, basically, Montana mostly. And I am in Apache Junction, Arizona right now.
Oh, I've been there.
It's nice and warm.
Yeah, it is.
Hey Josh, my name's Inyana. I'm another one of the account executives. I primarily focus on Southeast Alaska and I live in Anchorage, Alaska.
Okay. I lived in Anchorage for 3 years.
I think I knew that, Josh. I feel like we talked about that. Were you there for the military or what?
I was. Yeah, I was
Okay.
stationed at Fort Richardson.
Okay. Yeah. Nice.
Hi, Josh. I'm Sheila. I am working with operations, and I am split between Kirkland, Washington, and Southeast Alaska.
Okay. My daughter and son-in-law live in Kent.
I'm Deanna. I'm the marketing director, and I am out of Spokane.
Okay.
I'm Corinda. I'm the executive assistant, and I'm working for Wilderness out of Powell, Wyoming.
Okay. My only tie to Wyoming is I've been watching a lot of Longmire recently, so that's all we got there.
Hey Josh, I'm Jade.
Hi, Jade.
I'm general manager and I am out of Mesa, Arizona.
Mesa. I was just down in that area. Have you ever eaten at Steak 44?
Oh, I'm like cheap taste buds, but I know what it is. Maybe one day we'll splurge there, but
Yeah, I
I've heard good
got
things.
lucky, and my brother-in-law took me there and took the bill as well. Otherwise, we would have been in trouble.
Maybe one day I'll aspire to go there.
Yeah, that's good eating.
Hi, Josh. I'm Sherry, and I'm in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and I just started with the company on Monday, and I'm an accountant.
Okay.
Okay. So I think that. Oh, Noah, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Yeah. Hey, Josh. Unfortunately, I'm Ethan's brother.
For who?
Yeah,
Him.
for both of us. I also, unfortunately, I do live in Spokane as well. But yeah, that's about all I got to say. I run the business with Ethan, and we do have a lot of fun with it most of the time.
Well, it's good to meet everyone, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you. Ethan and I have been friends for a long time. When we asked if I would do this, I jumped at the opportunity to pay him back for a ton of help that he's given me over the years. But more likely to meet a bunch of people, or for a better reason, to meet a bunch of people that know him as well. So I'm excited to spend a little time with all of you.
And just we're missing 3 people. Just as a quick heads up, 3 people, I believe. Ethan, yeah. So Katie, who is in our operations department, is out this week. We're recording this video so that we can share it with everybody that's out. Who else is out today?
Mary Ellen, yeah.
And then Mary Ellen, and she's the founder of the company, nurse practitioner. She's out in Northeast Montana right now, actually working a contract this week for us at a small critical access hospital. So
okay.
And I'm sorry, I missed the introductions. I had to take care of something quickly. My name's Ashley. I'm an operations associate. I'm based out of Syracuse, Utah, just north of Salt Lake City. And I work with our providers mainly on assignments in Alaska.
I grew up in Roy, Utah.
Oh, okay. So yeah, we're here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. There are a whole lot of ties between us. We're a lot closer than 6 degrees from Kevin Bacon.
I think that's right. Yeah. And as you know, I'm based out of Tacoma, how long did you live in this area, Josh?
2003 until 20 when I left.
Yeah. So these guys are always giving me a hard time. They, for some reason, don't think that Tacoma is a destination, but there's plenty of time to convince them otherwise. But yeah, with that, I'll turn it over to you, Josh. Thanks so much for being here with us.
Okay. Do I have share capability?
You should, and if you don't, I'll fiddle with the settings.
Let's see. It looks like maybe. No, I don't.
Do you see any options there, Corinda? Let's see.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Can you guys see that?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Let's see if that'll go to presentation mode. There we go. So, yeah, a couple of weeks ago, Ethan and I were talking. He was actually just helping me out with some legal advice for some stuff I was working on with my mom, and we just got talking about what I'm doing, what you guys are doing, and he hit me up with this idea of talking to you. So I jumped on it. I thought it'd be kind of fun. So let me do a quick intro of myself so you can understand. So I did just over 30 years in the Army. The last 22 of it was with Special Forces. And there I've deployed 7 different times, and then I've been to about 26 different countries working with foreign militaries and either doing operations or in training. So this looks like a completely staged photo, and it's the only one in existence where I actually look kind of handsome, so I use it. But
whose hair was that?
Oh, yeah, whose hair was that exactly? That's before those helmets rubbed it off, and now I've got this bald look. Yeah. So yeah, 22 years in the Army. Pardon me, 30, just over 31 in the Army, and 22 as Green Beret. Pretty much said all of this. So now I'm working as the director of training and leadership development for a company called West Shore Home, and we're a $750 million home remodeling business, and we've got 25 branches in 13 states right now. We're getting ready to explode and hit the $1 billion mark. So a lot of growth opportunity happening, but more importantly, have the opportunity to serve with this guy. And I don't know if you know this, but outside of being a lawyer and you guys the CFO, he's a badass himself. So this is him and I getting ready to go jump out of helicopters. And if I remember right, we're getting ready to jump into water. I'm looking at what we're wearing, and I think we've got wetsuits on underneath those uniforms.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, and I'm sure that water wasn't warm. So, yeah. But so the big thing that I wanted to talk about today is some cool similarities between what you guys do at Wilderness Staffing or Wilderness Medical Staffing, and then what I had the opportunity to do as a Green Beret. So Green Berets operate in small teams. So there's only 12 of us that deploy into foreign countries and go do what we call God's work. But oftentimes it's 12 people against big problem sets. And that sounds a lot like what you guys are facing. How is it that you can find the right talent that's willing to go to these austere environments and provide, medical services? And that's a tough thing to do. And then even tougher, how is it that you maintain that operation where you're looking, you've got what I would call a forward deployed element with little support outside of some communications and emails, and then whatever is it that you guys can drive. So I was pretty impressed as I was reading through your guys' website and talking with Ethan about it, just how awesome of a job you guys do in providing medical care in these really remote environments. And my time up in Alaska, I had the opportunity to go and see some of these villages and really understand kind of what medical challenges are being faced out there. And then when I first joined Special Forces, I actually came in as a medical sergeant. So oftentimes when we would deploy into foreign countries, Philippines is one that comes to mind. I was the sole medical provider for not only my Special Forces team, but oftentimes for the villages and barangays that we were attempting to kind of win over and influence away from the political structure of some of the what we call extremist organizations down there. So terror groups that were trying to take over. So I remember doing things like we call them MedCaps, which is a medical civil action program where we went and ran healthcare clinics, out in the middle of these tiny little islands in the Philippines. And, those are super challenging, trying to find doctors or dentists that were willing to go out there and donate their time, spend a couple of hours during that day, but more than likely, 24 hours on either side of it, traveling. And then, trying to find ways to fit in culturally with the communities that we were attempting to serve. And I remember I was down there during Ramadan, and southern Philippines is predominantly Muslim. The Philippines itself is a Christian-based country, but all of southern Philippines is predominantly Islamic, and so that created a lot of tension between the government and the people. And then we jumped in the mix and attempted to find that happy medium in between. And one of the things that I did was during Ramadan, if you're familiar with it, they fast during the hours of daylight, so from sun up until sundown, and they've got a pretty short window where they do some prayers and then they get the opportunity to eat. But their fasts include abstaining from medicine. And so, just because you're fasting doesn't mean medical issues go away. And so I found a way that we could go into these villages, later in the evening at night, set up security, put up a bunch of lights, and then run medical or dental clinics in support of their religious beliefs. And outside of the fact that I was able to just help a ton of people, I really gained respect for their culture and a deeper understanding of what they do and what they believe, and then found that way to kind of bridge the gap between, what I was attempting to do, which was win hearts and minds, and what they were attempting to do, which was, live in a difficult environment, and then add the difficulty of attempting to fast for 30 days. So it ended up being really successful on that trip, and we ended up making that an SOP and emulating that every year, and it was very helpful. So one of the cool things I got to do as a medic down there, and then learning how to do wilderness dentistry, setting up these med clinics, which essentially was just pulling rotten teeth. But I got super good at running a dental clinic out of those plastic chairs that you can get at Walmart, and cold sterilization. And people laugh when I say, yeah, I've probably pulled 400 or 500 teeth. And they're like, what? You're not a dentist? I'm like, well, I mean, not in America. So anyway, so my whole point behind that is I understand the challenges that you guys are facing when attempting to get people to go into these environments. And so the other similarities is the fact that you're a very small company being run by about 12 or 13 people, supporting these elements that are kind of scattered throughout the Northwest in these very remote and austere environments. And I wanted to number one, tell you how impressed I am with what you're doing, and number two, commiserate a little bit with you on how difficult it is to do that. And if you look here on the layout, you've got, a special forces team, you've got a commander, an attachment, an assistant commander. They call it here the technical warrant officer, and that reminds me of Ethan and Noah, or Noah and Ethan, however you want to do that. And then your ops manager being your operations sergeant, and his assistant, and then you've got the specialties. And I wanted to just hit that a little bit. On a special forces team, our four main jobs are somebody that's a weapons expert, somebody that's a engineering expert, somebody that's a medical expert, and then somebody that's an expert in communications. And they have a junior and a senior. And the senior's job is to make that junior good enough to take over in the event that somebody gets promoted out of a job, or in the event of combat, something worse happens. And so as I'm looking at the jobs that you have, account executives, ops and ops support, it really is laid out a whole lot like a special forces team. And so I'm pretty impressed with the way you guys run this. So one of the things I want to talk about is what an SF team does and how that really ties into what you guys do. And so for us, cross-training is probably one of the most important things that we do, because there's no such thing as one person's job on an SF team. You've got, just a myriad of tasks that have to get done. And oftentimes the person that's trained in that is off doing other things. And so cross-training and making sure that everyone is capable of working, maybe not at that expert level, but at least at a level good enough to keep the ball rolling until that expert can get back in there. And when I was a first sergeant, this is when I really got to know Ethan, when I was the first sergeant, which in the military is kind of like it's like the operations manager for the company. You've got the commander, which is the CEO, and then you've got the operations manager that makes sure that all the different departments are doing the things that they need to do. And then Ethan was our legal advisor. And out of self-preservation, I made good friends with him, right? I was going to make fun friends with the cook, the supply guy, and the lawyer, just to keep yourself out of jail, keep yourself well fed, and make sure you got good equipment. So when I'm talking about cross training, when I would tell my guys all the time, there's 3 jobs on an ODA, and I think you guys can see this within Wilderness as well. The 3 jobs are your job, whatever it is that you get paid to do, and then our job, which is all those little collective things that aren't necessarily assigned to somebody, but still have to get done, and then finally the other person's job. And I tried to drive it in that, hey, we don't go home until those 3 jobs are done. Because if you see somebody struggling at a task, they're not going to be able to pick up some of those little small things that have to get done that aren't necessarily assigned. So go ahead and grab them and do more than your fair share. And then when all of that is done, reach across and say, hey, what is it that you've got going on that I can help you with? So at the end of the day, we can both go home at a decent time. And so that I've kind of kept that as my mantra, my leadership mantra, as I left the military. And in big organizations like I'm at, and we're, at that 750 million, getting ready to dip into that $1 billion revenue stream, you start really kind of living that corporate life, and where people are like, hey, my role description says this, and if it's outside of that, I don't have to do it. And you're right, you don't get paid to do things that are outside of your role description. And in a big organization, they just hire enough people to do that. But in a small company like Wilderness, it just doesn't happen. And so understanding that true teamwork comes from making sure that the 3 jobs are done by the end of the day really helps out. So the other thing that makes an SF team very successful is their ability to go split team or smaller. And that's another, big similarity I see with you guys, where, you've got people, Arizona, Wyoming, Washington, Montana, and then Ashley down in Utah. Just everybody working in a smaller element in order to get the larger job done. And I think as a nation, we're getting better at that, especially with COVID and working remote. And there was a push for that ahead of time, but I think we've gotten a lot better at it. But where I see people really successful are organizations like yourself, where you started out this way and your business model is, hey, let's send somebody into the middle of nowhere, and then let's find the best way to support them from wherever we're at. And being in one of these SF teams that picked up everything we had and drove, flew in the middle of the night and dropped into some country, and the only thing we had was a radio call every 3 days, back to our bosses to find out if we're doing the right things or if we're making a dent in the situation. I see that in what you guys do. And so we became very reliant upon each other for our expertise and their advice and support, but we also became reliant upon ourselves in knowing that we learn from our teammates and we're capable of doing, sometimes only at the survival level, but at least able to hold down the fort until an expert can get in. And I would imagine that that's the case. And I got to apologize. My screen, my split screen's down, so I'm only looking at my PowerPoint and not you guys. So let me take a pause for a minute. Let me ask. We'll pick on Ashley because she's a Utah girl. Do you see? Can you see where Wilderness finds the way to figure out how to do those three jobs: your job, our job, and your friend's job?
Yeah, absolutely. We work with a lot of unique situations where either clients that need things filled quickly or providers that need assistance in credentialing, which is what I do. So, like, for example, I know my job and our job is to make sure a provider is prepared to go. And so we can do our duties as far as communicating information and facilitating that kind of thing. But then our friend's job, supporting one another, because we all have different tasks in this. Is I have my job, but our account executives and our recruitment team, they have their jobs as well. So I can do my tasks and I can support them in doing their tasks, either as lending a hand to upload documents or various things like that. And then it was our job, their job, and our friend's job. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's right. So your job,
then,
our job, and then somebody else's job.
Okay, so yeah, my job, making sure credentialing's set up. Our job as a company to assure that all elements of an assignment are completed, and then their job, for example, usually our clients are responsible for the actual credentialing process, but we can assist in reaching out to references or communicating with providers to source information to make sure we all reach the same goal, which is to get that provider to that clinic.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's in my opinion, it's rewarding to be able to see that accomplished and knowing that, hey, that's not what I got hired on to do, but I was able to get somebody home a little bit earlier today. And I was able to get that provider what they needed to do, when they're out and about. So thanks. I appreciate that. So Diane, Susan, and I'm going to butcher this, but I'm going to try it anyway. Anaya? Did I say that right?
Close.
Iniana? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Where's that from?
Albania.
Oh, okay. Closest I was to Albania was Bosnia.
It's pretty close.
Let's see, but I did have an Albanian sergeant major at the academy with me when I went through that, and that guy was super interesting to work with. So, as account execs, can you? And it doesn't matter which one does it, or if all three of you want to jump in. Can you talk a little bit about how you see cross training within Wilderness has supported what you're trying to do at the company?
I'll speak up. I think that, yeah, as far as the cross training goes, as an AE, I know that we do a lot of cross training, with like recruiting and stuff like that, and what their tasks are. But mostly, I'm trying to not like butcher this, but mostly with operations and stuff like that. We've had some of these types of classes and stuff where we've gone through and just kind of talked about, this is what happens in operations, for this or for that. But really, I think that, oh my God, I'm totally losing my train of thought. Put me on the spot here.
Sorry about that.
But we've had a lot of cross training type things, and I think another one that was super helpful for me was when we did some of the back office stuff and worked kind of through some of the payroll issues that come up, because as an AE we get a lot of those calls and stuff that I I can't answer this correctly, or, we have no clue what they're talking about because we don't usually deal in that department and stuff like that. So, I think that one was probably one of the most helpful cross trainings that I had. Just being able to help my providers more by having that, just a little bit of information. So I am totally for cross training. I think that it's super important for us to understand each other's jobs so that we can set each other up for success, by knowing what ops is anticipating what they're going to need. Trying to get as much information as I can over to them so that it helps them, do their job better. So, I don't know if that answered your question, but
Yeah,
I really,
I think it did really well, actually. So who was this, Diane or Susan?
Susan,
Hi, Susan. Thanks. I appreciate that.
no problem.
So Jade, as a general manager, how do you facilitate that kind of cross training between your team?
Josh, I'm regretting giving you my real name now. I live in fear of spontaneous public speaking. I just barely became general manager a couple of months ago, so I myself am still learning a lot of this. But one of the things we do for cross training is every Wednesday, just like this meeting, we hold a 1-hour meeting where we specifically are cross training the team, where we choose a topic every week that we think everyone on the team would benefit from. So Noah and Ethan have made a really good point to make this a weekly thing where we're consistently training the whole team on something rather than just when it comes up or maybe after an emergency has already happened. We're more so playing offense than playing defense, if that makes sense.
I like it. Right. So yeah, one of my favorite phrases from the Army is, if you stay ready, you never have to get ready. And although that can be exhausting to always try and stay ready, it's super helpful when you're not, trying to fight from your back foot. So yeah, and good for you guys for making it a routine where, once a week you're gonna find the opportunity to find a task that someone can help somebody else out with if they get caught up, or help that forward deployed element. So going back to my time when I was a first sergeant, and Ethan he'll probably remember this. So our HR department in the Army is called the S1, the Staff 1 section. And as with all things, all organizations, it runs off of paperwork. And I remember when I took over as first sergeant, so I went in and I started reviewing what the HR folks were doing and watching them and paying attention. And there was a whole bunch of guys coming in. And when I say guys, it was at the time, all ODAs were only males. It was an all-male unit. We had some females in our support section, but generally speaking, our operators were all males. And so when I say guys, it's because that's what it was. But I would come in and I would see guys that had been, deployed for 8 months and, in some remote, austere area where they had no ability to get their paperwork done and caught up. And they would come back and they would walk in and they would be like, hey, my promotion board is coming up, in the next 60 days. Can you guys get this paperwork online? And I saw some of our S1, some of our HR folks would look at it and say, well, you're missing all these things, and hand it back and say, come back and see me when you get this done. And I brought him in one day and I said, hey, look, you work from 9 to 5, and then you go home and you have your weekends off, and you get 4-day weekends every time, there's a national holiday, and you get 3-day weekends, once a quarter, just because we're cognizant of how hard we work people. But at the end of the day, you spend a lot of time at home. And when these guys come in, they have been gone and didn't have the ability to get all this stuff done. So why is it that you don't think that you could have grabbed that paperwork, gone through it with a fine-tooth comb, knocked out everything that could have been done by somebody else, and submitted that forward? And they all kind of gave me that deer in the headlight look and said, well, there's not a reason we can't do that. I said, well, why don't we start picking up that? And in my opinion, that was a great example of somebody else's job. I'm asking these guys to go to these foreign countries and do these very difficult jobs. And now I'm asking you to find your best efforts to make them successful for what they're doing. And so I see that, when it comes to, the GMs and the account execs, I see that really as where you guys make just and Ashley, with your credentialing, where you make such an impact on these people that are just trying to do the right thing. See patients, get people healthy, do some preventive medicine when possible. And they're, out in the middle of Canada or some of these other places where it's very, very difficult to get some of these things done. So I appreciate what you guys are doing in support of that. And I really like the fact that you all assume that it's your job to make sure that they're successful out in there. And it doesn't sound like, hey, I'm in it for a paycheck. It sounds like I'm in it for to be successful as an organization, but more importantly, to provide quality healthcare in some places that don't normally get it. So I applaud you for that.
Yeah. Hey, Josh, can I butt in here real quick?
Please.
Yeah, you're kind of riffing there got me thinking. Really, that's the way the company was founded, and really was the value proposition from early on, is that instead of being a big giant corporation where you're getting slammed with cold calls and stuff, you pick up the phone, you call, you get a real person. That person understands the provider experience. I think that's one of the ways when we do it right where we can really stand out from other companies. And I also have to give credit. I'm going to just pick on one person here, but I could tell a similar story about many other people on the team. But in terms of like taking on responsibility that maybe is outside of your job description or even outside of the company job description, like dozens of examples come to mind here, but I just want to give us a special shout out to Diane here because she came to mind when I was hearing Josh talk about that, and just all the times where Diane, and I could easily tell the same story about Susan and others here too, but it just came to mind was the times where we have to go the extra mile to maybe do some hand holding with a client in some of these kind of rural Alaska places where it's like we're a staffing company. I'm not really quite sure how we got into this particular issue set, but it really is make or break for getting the provider out there and making it possible for them to have healthcare in a rural or remote community. So again, I could think of examples looking at everyone's faces here with all of you, but I thought that was a really important point that Josh made, and really what makes us stand out as a company. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Josh.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the biggest thing that makes SF teams successful is the fact that they've developed a sense of trust in one another. Because at the end of the day, that's who they have to rely upon. 12 folks out in the middle of nowhere with just a phone call up to a boss and support that could literally be days and days away. Again, very similar to what your providers are going through. And so developing that trust in one another takes time, and it takes effort, and it takes patience. And it's oftentimes it's building the capabilities of teammates so that you trust their ability to do something when you can't. And so that cross training that you guys do on a weekly basis is so important for that. And then the other one was, we have to build trust with external organizations. And so, an example of that was when I had the opportunity to go to Bangladesh a couple of different times. And if anyone is looking for a super cool place to go, Bangladesh is not on that list. That's not a fun country to go to. Overpopulated, super poor, and super just rough to live in. But while I was down there, I had to reach out and find these hospitals that had capabilities in the event that some of the stuff that we were doing, if a guy got hurt, I could get them to it and get them, at least stabilized until I can figure out how to use, the American Red Cross or, some of these organizations to start doing, medical evac, these austere medical evac capabilities. And so I had these really cool opportunities to go out and meet doctors and go in and establish a relationship with them. And everything that I was asking was based off of, hey, I can do nothing for you, but here's what I'm trying to do for your country. And in the event that this goes down, I can get you some money, right? I'll be able to pay for this on the backside. But I really need some help to get, our guys taken care of. And so developing those relationships with external organizations became absolutely key. And then, I've got stories like this for days where, go to Afghanistan or Iraq. You would think that the Army as a whole is kind of one organization, but to be honest, it's very fragmented and siloed. And so if you're in the special operations community, oftentimes you do not have a good relationship with some of the conventional forces. And to be fair, some of that is our fault, and some of that is the fault of some of these conventional forces. But I always found that if I could walk in and say, hey, look, this is what I can provide your guys. You don't have some of the looser rules that we get. So if you've got guys that need to qualify on their weapons so that they can, get promoted, I have training ammunition and you don't. And I've got a range and you don't. So why don't you send your guys over and I'll get, one of my experts to coach them up, and we'll get them, qualified on their weapon in the middle of somewhere where they ordinarily wouldn't be able to do that. But I'm going to need something in return. And sometimes it's, hey, can you provide a route clearance package, meaning an engineer unit that can go down and make sure there's no bombs on this road, or, so it was this give and take working with these outside organizations. And I see, Diane, in marketing, I see you as like the key person for that, making those relationships and marketing what it is that you're capable of doing, and then finding ways to be mutually supportive. And obviously Jade and Jade, you were saying something about your real name. I didn't quite hear that when you said that. Can you repeat that right quick?
When you were calling on people to speak, I just said I should not have given you my real name. I regret that.
Okay. I get you there. But I see that as being such an important task, especially with a smaller organization, and a very difficult task because, let's be honest, everybody's in it for themselves. At the end of the day, it's what's in it for me, and being able to provide that and saying, hey, look, we can be mutually supportive here and have mutually benefits, but it takes the right person to go in and make those relationships. And that's, the next bullet there is foster relationships and then provide that mutual support within those relationships. And that's a tough thing to do. And oftentimes it's promises and then a lot of effort in order to meet those promises. Then the other thing that happens is, and I'm sure you guys can immediately see the similarities here, are being adaptive to ever-changing environments. The political landscape changes, the contract changes, who's asking for providers out in the middle of nowhere, and how that funding is going to come down, and what are the laws affiliated with it. And poor Jade, I understand my wife does some of the credentialing for the dental offices that she works with, and I always know when it's credentialing time because she's pulling her hair out, and she could be very finding people that know what they're doing and getting the help from them is super beneficial to her. And then the last thing that makes an SF team highly successful is they recognize and value other cultures. And I can see how that would be, really important with Wilderness Medical. Just being able to say, okay, yeah, I've got a doctor that, trained at NYU, and, they're the best cardiologist on the East Coast. And now we're going to put them, in, on the north slope of Alaska, or some tiny little reservation, in northern Montana. They're outside of their element, and if they can't build that relationship with their patients, they're not going to be successful. And so I guess I could ask this question. I'll just open this at large. How is it that you as an organization train your providers to understand the cultures in which they're going to go work?
Yeah, it's a super important question. I would encourage anyone who has something to say on the subject to please chime in. I think one of the things we navigate with this, Josh, is that as to us, the providers are contractors, which is great because they can come and go as they please. So if they want to work 1 month and take 11 off, they're able to do it. It does put some handcuffs on what we're able to do as far as like training them. We can't treat them as employees. But having said that, I do think there's some space here for us to do more. And Noah and I, just for everyone's benefit, I think Deanna's the only person I've talked to about this so far, but Noah and I had a call with a different staffing company yesterday in a different industry space. They don't do medical staffing, but we were talking to their head of recruiting. And one of our big takeaways from that call was, we're pretty good at like sifting through resumes and determining credentials and all that stuff, but the real art of what we do and the best value we can bring to clients is figuring out that kind of soft skills side of personality and who can go into a village and be a Joseph Burwell or pick your Mel Bingham and learn from the community and be a part of it, versus who's going to go in there and try to change everything and try to be a bulldozer. If we're able to select the former instead of the latter, I think that's where we really thrive as a team and where we really bring value to these communities.
Is there anyone else that wants to jump in on that? If not, no big deal.
Yeah. I don't know if, Diane and Yana especially, but, especially in Alaska, the culturally from one end of Alaska to the other is completely different. You've got all these different, geographic areas. There are different tribes. And so, talking about the AEs in Alaska, especially have to really prep our providers for the assignment. I think about the most we do right now is just being very transparent about, hey, here's the assignment, here's the town you're going to, here's the the culture and all the different details and stuff like that. I don't know, Diane, or if you guys want to kind of touch on kind of how you prep the providers for that, especially if they haven't been out there before.
Sure, I'll kind of jump in. I'm at a little bit of an advantage as well as Anyana is, because I lived in Alaska for 15 years, and so I'm able to give providers information about the different tribes in Alaska and what life is like in many of the communities. My husband was a pilot up there, flying into the villages for 20 years. So he's been a good resource for me too, for information to pass on. Another thing that's been extremely valuable is I like to put providers that are going out to these villages for the first time, I'll put them in touch with a previous provider. And so they can get a firsthand take on, what the people are like, what amenities are there, housing, good, bad, whatever it may be. And they can also talk to them, as one medical professional to another. So that's another level of information that only, people that have been there, done that, can give someone new to that community. It's been very valuable.
Yeah, that handover is so important, where you have the opportunity to say, okay, what worked, what didn't work, or what were the gains that you were making, and how can I build upon those? super important. Hey, can I ask a question? Do you guys do you have essentially a crossover time where the outgoing provider has the opportunity to do a handover like in theater or in the village with the new provider?
Yeah,
Yeah.
good question. So, like a rip sort of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, AEs, correct me here when I'm speaking, but I think we are more like the Department of State than the Defense, where you kind of, at best case scenario, you high five on the airplane.
Sure.
But some of the clients who have oversight will arrange for an overlap. It's just we're a little bit at the mercy of the client and what they're comfortable with in terms of overlap. Did I get that right, A's?
Yeah, you're correct. A good example is one of our largest clients, Eastern Aleutian Tribes. They absolutely insist upon it. Depending on the location, it's at minimum a day overlap with the outgoing provider. In a lot of cases, in these more remote solo provider sites, they allow for 2 to 3 day overlap, so they get a good orientation.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Are you as AEs, are you keeping a file on each of those locations where you talk about, what went right, what went wrong, and what programs that you're attempting to build on?
We keep extensive notes on every step of the way, on the provider, on the client. We have what's called Sense. It's a survey. We take that information from the client as well as the providers. That gives us information, kind of this insider information that we wouldn't normally get. So that's very helpful. And that's an automated system.
That's awesome. That's a cool thing. Okay, I recognize that we're getting close to the hour, so let me click through this real quick. So, the biggest thing is, what's always common with an SFODA, and that's change. And I see that again with your organization, constantly trying to find a new contractor, getting them to understand the culture of what you want Wilderness Med to present. Which is hard to do, right? Working through contractors to affect the culture and the influence that you want to have is a difficult thing to do. So I really applaud you guys as you go through that. But change is such an interesting thing, because it's the one thing that small organizations have as a constant is, hey, it's always going to be something new. And it's always going to be something different. So even in these long running contracts that you have, I would imagine that just the fact that the change in provider brings all new challenges in. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that, and I just wanted to bring this up. Has anybody ever heard of the Tuckman's theory of organizational development or organizational change? Has anyone seen this before?
I think I've heard Ethan rattle off the 5 steps before.
Yeah. So the first time I heard this, I thought, man, why didn't I learn this when I was, as a first line supervisor? I wish somebody had taught me this. I actually didn't get to learn this until I went through the Sergeant Majors Academy, which is like the last leadership school on the enlisted side. And so I made it a kind of a promise that whenever I had the opportunity to talk to organizations, that I would talk a little bit about this Tuckman's theory, because I think it's so important to understand what organizations go through whenever there is a change, and then the best way to work past it. And so really the 5 stages of Tuckman's theory is the forming, storming, norming, performing, and finally adjourning. And with you guys having contractors, I see you running through all 5 of those stages. Oftentimes an organization will kind of stop at number 4. They hope to stay at that performing level. But I just wanted to run through a little bit of kind of a definition of each of these and just give you a sense of why it's important to understand what they are and then how to move past each one. So in the forming stage, that's when you're first building that relationship. And, Jade, you just came in. I think, Ashley, you just came into the company as well. When you first come in, everyone's kind of at their best behavior and they want to put their best foot forward, but they don't necessarily know what they're doing or what their role is or what the extent of their role is. And so there's a lot of really polite effort, but it's kind of misguided and not necessarily moving in the right direction. So performance level will be okay, but it's not going to be awesome. Unfortunately, what always happens is there's a dip in performance and we move into the storming phase. And to be honest, anyone that's, if a newly married couple that has a baby, you see what storming happens because suddenly there's added responsibilities that nobody necessarily knows what they are. And everyone's trying to figure out who needs to do what, who can hand off to somebody else. And so, you see that in family dynamics, and you see that in organizations, especially when you're bringing new roles into the company. And so there's a bit of a challenge where people are starting to identify, those that have been around a little bit are either attempting to push some of their extra work off, or those that are looking to maybe grow within the organization are going to kind of seize that as the opportunity to maybe take a little bit more control. And then, the poor new person is just stumbling around trying to figure out, what they're supposed to be doing and to gain some form of traction. And so there's always this kind of dip in performance whenever there's a change to an organization. And that's, hey, we got a new client, we got a new, we brought somebody new onto the team, somebody's been replaced on the team. And then you start seeing as that smooths out, you start moving into that norming where people understand, okay, this is my role and this is the size of my playing field and I can maximize it here. But this is where it's somebody else's role. And so I need to give them the opportunity or give them the support that they need in order to get that. And then ideally you move up into that performing stage where people know their roles, people know each other's roles, they're supportive of each other's roles, and they can get into that 3 jobs. Hey, my job, our job, your job. And that's when performing really happens. And then in your organization particularly, you've got that adjourning phase where, hey, we really appreciate you as a contracted provider. Thanks for everything you did, but this is our opportunity to kind of grab, all that institutional knowledge that you built up in your short time there. We want to be able to grab onto that and use it in the future. And so the key to success through Tuckman's theory is communications and getting onto this as early as possible. So, as you're talking those account notes that you were taking as the account execs, being able to give that handover packet, like, okay, these are the things that you're gonna face, and these are the things that are going to be expected of you. Read through this, get to understand this, get to know this, and then if you have questions, we'll be able to answer that, and then constantly feeding them as much information as possible. When that dip happens, if you let people know ahead of time, and this is why I teach this to as many people as I can, like, hey, storming's going to happen. And if you're the new boss or you're the new account exec or whatever their role is, when you see that dip, it's easy to kind of have that panic mode of, oh, I'm not doing this right. Well, you are doing it right. This is a very normal thing. It's going to happen no matter what. The key to this is find out what that storming is, open up those lines of communications, clarify people's understandings and clarify their roles, and then give them the support that they need to do it. And as a general manager, your big job is and I don't know this particularly for you, but the way I would understand this in most organizations, that GM, you're all about resource allocations. What are the things that I can give each of these departments that is going to make them successful, but without hurting another department? And again, clarifying why you're pushing resources to one department versus the other, and then letting them know what the plan is in order to gain resources back from them, eliminates some of that storming and really starts moving them into that norming phase. And then as you start, think about the things that we talked about earlier, where we're building trust with one another, we're doing, cross training, and we're working on being mutually supportive. That's when we move into that performing zone. And so just as kind of a once over for everyone recognize that no matter what, whenever there's a change to the organization, you're going to see a version of this. And if you recognize that it's coming, you can look across the table and be like, hey, you know, I don't know, we'll pick on Susan and Diane, you know, hey, we're both trying to get the same thing. I can give a little bit here if you can give a little bit on this side. And now both of our accounts are going to start moving in the right direction. And it's that open line of communication that clarifies the storming, you know, slingshots you know, past storming up into that performing. So that's kind of my once over. Anytime I get the opportunity to talk to an organization, I just want to tell you that it's going to happen, and that it's very natural, and that it's easy to get past. And I recognize that I took the entire hour, and I apologize for that. I know that the one thing that we never have enough of is time. So if I can just end right there and just open up for a couple of minutes of questions, and then I'll let you guys do your internal AAR.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. Does anyone have questions? Fire away.
That is either a testament to I'm the greatest instructor ever, or the worst, and you guys just want me to take off. So either way, I understand where you're coming from. Well, if there's no questions, then let me say this. Just in the brief opportunity that I've had to talk with Ian and do a little research into the company, and then get the opportunity to talk with you a little bit, what an impressive organization you are. You took on some massive challenges to provide healthcare into these remote villages where that's super hard to get. And having done medicine in those environments, it's hard to provide. So the opportunities that you guys have taken and the challenges that you've accepted and clearly have succeeded in are pretty impressive. So thanks for the opportunity to talk with you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Josh. It really was a pleasure. You've given us a lot to chew on and think about. And just as a quick thank you, Deanna from our marketing team put together an awesome calendar, which is thanks to Brenda en route to your abode in Pennsylvania right now. Along with, there's something else as well, Brenda. What was it? Oh, a hat. Yeah. As the Fall Ugly Challenge guys, we are wearing hats. So we got one headed your way. You can think of us anytime you support it. But yeah, Josh, real pleasure. A lot of connections that we can draw between your experience and what we do every day. So thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah. Hey, with all the similarities that we talked about, I'll just do a quick recruiting pitch. If anybody's tired of working for Wilderness and wants to go be a Green Beret, you seem to know exactly what you're doing, so jump on it.
Yeah. Thanks, Josh.
Thanks, Josh. No worries. You guys have a good meeting. Thanks for letting me come in.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, guys. Yeah, running a little behind here, but thanks to everyone for your patience and attention. I know it's a little different, and it's not necessarily one-on-one in everything we do. Fortunately, you know, it's not a requirement of our jobs anymore that we jump out of airplanes or helicopters or anything. That gets old after a while, and it hurts when you wake up in the morning sometimes. But I do think there was a couple of themes that really jumped out at me. Hopefully you all found something there that you can think about and chew on and try to apply to what you do at Wilderness. But with that very spirit in mind, I thought it'd be useful if we could just pass around the room real quick, maybe say one thing that you found interesting and one thing that you want to kind of work into your role at Wilderness, or think we should as a team. So who wants to be brave and kick us off?
I'll kick it off. You know, I see the similarity where the cross training is so important, and I think we're on the right path with doing that. The better we understand each other's jobs, the better we will be able to be at our own. So I saw great value in what he was saying there.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
I agree. The thing that kept coming to mind with me was the four words that I hate. That's not my job. I don't like that. And I know that there are some organizations like that. So I'm just really appreciative of what you guys have been doing as far as helping us learn more about each other's positions and how, things are